Hi, and welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner. I'm your host, Tiffanie DeVan, and I'm happy today to have with me proud parent Nicole Elbertson, who's going to talk to us about Life Beyond High School, Parent Edition, Part 2. So if any of our listeners were listening in to the previous episode, we did a Part 1 with the Parent Edition, and you're just giving your perspective on life beyond high school, how you prepared, and things like that. So I'm happy to have you here, and welcome to the podcast. Thanks. All right, just to get started, you have a son.
I do.
Who is currently a
rising sophomore
going to college, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about your journey. What's the career college preparation experience been like for him? How did you all start your journey, and tell us a little bit about that.
He was really lucky in that it was in the gifted program, and as early as middle school, their gifted teacher started them in exploring colleges and careers and understanding the expense and financial aid. So he already had a lot of background, even beyond what I share as someone who works at VIA. But they also toured some colleges, so they looked at like a very large state school and then a small private school. So he already knew ahead of time like what kind of school he liked, and he had a good plan for like understanding how it all works.
That was nice, because a lot of people don't always get that at such an early age, and we stress that all the time. The earlier they get exposed to it, the more time they'll have to figure out what's a good fit for them. Can you think of, and I don't know if you remember back then, what his idea of a good school was like? Was it a big one, small one? Because so many different things.
No, he did not like the large school. He felt that it was just too big, too overwhelming, and he just kind of felt lost there. He really liked that smaller school. So that's where he knew he was headed right away.
Okay. And then when it came time to choose a career, how did we start that process, and what things did you look at?
As he got into his junior and senior year of high school, he was doing some different courses with computer science and drones and things like that, and realized he really liked those areas. So that pretty much sent him in that direction. He decided he wanted to major in computer science.
Did you all as parents, have any input into that, or he kind of just figured it out on his own?
That was his decision. I figured, that's what he wants to do. It's good to choose a path that you're interested in. So it seemed like a good fit for him, especially with all that he had done with electronics and computers and things.
Just wondering, what did you want to do when you were younger?
So I considered teaching,
okay.
But I've always wanted to do public relations. So that's what I majored in, and that's what I'm still doing.
All right, nice. So how did you, and I just came up with that, and I'm going to ride with it just for a little bit. So with public, because you work at VIA, and you've been here for quite some time.
Yes.
And you do a lot with the PR and all that and things like that. What influenced you to actually want to go into it? Like, what were the deciding factors that said, this is truly a good fit for me?
So I had done some shadowing over the summer with some different people in the PR world, and it varies greatly depending on the industry you're in. But I like planning things, and I like writing, and just looking at all the different aspects of public relations and trying to place a favorable face to a brand, I just thought was really interesting. And I love the communications field, so that's where I felt it was a good fit for me.
Nice. And I asked that question because you have a specific path. Your son chose one totally different than you. And I was just wondering, like, okay, it's nice that you allowed him the freedom to kind of choose his path, but I was also wondering what inspired you to choose something totally different than what he does. So that's pretty cool.
Well, he's very good at math, and that is not my forte. I'm on the creative side, so I always knew we wouldn't match up as far as what we chose to do.
Okay, so for that student or that parent who's trying to figure it all out, maybe they don't know where to start. They're looking for careers, they're looking for schools. What are your post-secondary options? What advice would you have to the student or the family in general on how to explore different options?
I think it's really hard. Looking at him, looking at his friends, and you think, at this age, how are they supposed to pick what they want their entire life's career to be? And you don't have to go and stay in that same direction, but, trying to figure it out, like, there's so many options. And I felt for all these kids, and quite a few of his friends had no idea what they wanted to do. So what they ended up doing was they went to college. They're doing like their gen ed courses, trying some things out with some different courses and seeing what clicks for them, what feels like that could be their passion. For others, I would recommend, I personally don't think a gap year is great, because I think you get out of that learning, what do you want to call it, status or routine, and I think that it's harder to go back to school then. So I think for kids who really have no idea, maybe a community college, and just start taking some courses here and there. They can still work, they can still make money on the side, but just to keep in that path and explore what they want to do.
Explore those different options. You mentioned a couple things. Passion. We've kind of said that you said with your son, was finding his passion. You had a passion in the PR and the writing and things like that. I think that's also key, like knowing really, where your passion lies and finding that dream job or that, temporary dream job, because again, it doesn't have to be a lifetime. And you mentioned also the gap year. I agree with you personally. That is my personal opinion, unless you have a specific plan mapped out. Right. So I think when, from our President Obama's oldest daughter, she took a gap year, and all of a sudden that became popular, because at the same time, we're still in that COVID era and all of that. So a gap year was like a popular thing. And I always tell, when I talk to students, I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do with that gap year? Because a lot can happen in that 1 year that's going to deter you from your original path. Unless you have a structured plan to say, well, I'm doing this gap year, I'm going to do some shadowing opportunities, I'm going to do a couple different interns to kind of figure out what I want to do. And unless it's structured, sometimes I think you veer off and you never come back. That's not everyone's scenario. Right. And I also tell students, and sometimes they'll say, well, I think it was Malia Obama did it. I'm like, yeah, but you don't have the resources that Malia Obama has. Right. So again, it can be different, and to each his own. I also think that students should figure out what fits for them. And there's so many different resources that are out there to help them. The counselors and the school districts are there, and even the post-secondary schools. You can pop in and talk to them as well. Experts, of course, are always around at FIA as well as our website, but it's nice to know that we have parents like you that will come on and share your information and share your knowledge about, the different career opportunities and exploration pieces that are out there. Now, for your son is going to his sophomore year.
Yes.
That wasn't his when he started his original career goals. He was going in one direction, and he made some changes, so he had to pivot, right?
Yes.
And I tell everyone, sometimes life throws you a couple curveballs. There are obstacles, that you're faced with. How do you prepare? How did you all prepare, or anyone in general, prepare for challenges to stay on track, stay motivated, stay the course when your original plan doesn't work out the way you thought it would?
I always tell my son there's no shame in taking some steps back to refocus on the right path forward. So circumstances beyond our control, ended up with him taking a different direction. So he decided that computer science was not his passion. He realized he did not enjoy sitting behind a computer all the time, and he wanted to do something completely different. He also decided that the school that he was at, was not really the right fit for him. So we completely repivoted, and he's now majoring in criminal justice, and that was not offered at his school anyway, so he's looking at other schools. So I think for all students and parents, like, you can't have a set path and expect to never deviate from it. You never know what's coming down the road that could change things. So I say just be flexible and be willing to make changes where they're needed.
The beauty, I think, in your story is that there were a couple curveballs thrown his way, and he landed in a better position. He learned more about what he really wanted to do. And how often do we hear about the student that goes to school, starts their career, invests time, money, energy, and then they're like, I hate my job. I don't like this. This is not my passion. And now you have to start all over again, or it took away some time where you could really been focusing and exploring those other options. So in his instance, it sounds like he landed in a good position, and the change was good. Yeah,
because he only put 1 year in. There's a couple classes that aren't going to count, but he did some gen ed courses too, which will help him, moving forward towards his new degree. So I said, the same thing. Like, at least you didn't put 4 years in and then find out you hated it and have to start all over. So
And sometimes people do the whole four and start all over. And if they do, I still say, you know what, you didn't spend a lifetime. It's only 4 years. In his case, it was only a year. And so I think I would encourage all students, all families who are listening to this to take, because this is a life thing that happens. It happens not just when you're talking careers or school. How many times just in day-to-day life do you have a plan and something happens, and now those plans have to kind of like be rebuilt, or you have to change it. So that happens in everyday life. So I encourage all students to not get discouraged, and to, if they run into these obstacles, to kind of take a step back like you all did, be flexible, like you said, come up with a new plan and really research how you can benefit, because there are pros and cons to everything.
And I would also say reach out and seek help. I've been so impressed with the resources that are available to students on campus now. He was able to talk to his advisor and get advice. Even when he said, I'm not interested in computer science, he was willing to make him, connect him with someone in criminal justice. And I feel like there's so many resources where you can go and say, I'm mentally not feeling like I'm in a good place in college, or it's lonely, or I miss home, or this is overwhelming, the workload, or I have no idea what I want to do and I don't know what to do. I've just been impressed with all the different options that are available that was not available when I was in school.
Right. And the cool part, I think, is that it's starting to become made more, there's more information out there about these resources, and it's not such a taboo thing to reach out for help if you need it. I still say, and I always go back to COVID, because since 2020, I think things have changed. The feel of things have changed. There's more depression. There's more people being overwhelmed. So going back into a school setting is even different from what students are speaking on. And I think it's important that regardless of which school or which path you're taking, that you find those resources that are out there if you need them. I think that should be a big part of a school search for someone, to make sure they're finding the right fit. If you know up front that there's certain things that you may be dealing with, see if the school has certain student support services that are there to assist you, or the community in which you're going to be involved with. There's no shame to it. And I applaud you, as a parent, for saying, hey, we're here, we're supporting. And sometimes families will say, nope, we've already started this, you have to finish. Regardless of what the student is really feeling, like, this is not what I want to do, it's not a good feeling, or anything like that. So, excuse me, any advice for that parent who might say, well, you know what, we started with this, they need to finish with this, because time is money, we've invested too much, and we've invested too much, we're going to do this, as opposed to really keying in on what the student's desires are.
I mean, I look at it like, it's not my life, it's his. So he should be able to choose the path he wants. I can provide input and I can provide some guidance based on what I've experienced, but it's still ultimately his choice. And as far as saying I'm footing the bill, it's a shared bill with him. And I also think, that's part of being a parent. You don't get to say, well, I'm paying for it, so you do everything that I say. Otherwise, you're not being their own person.
There you go. I agree with that. So now we're talking about covering the cost. So again, you've worked for FIA for some time. So there are some things you just naturally understand, or you have immediate access to certain resources from our websites or Access Partners or anyone else. Yeah, or me. Yeah. So you have some information, and then your own experiences with school. You're not totally oblivious to the fact that there's a bill. It's going to come in the student's name. It might be slightly big. What was your experience with, navigating this path with your son, as far as costs are concerned?
So I guess to explain a little bit about where the curveball hit, he had received a full 4-year scholarship. He told us ahead of time he wanted to join the military. And I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming at all. But he did all the research on his own and found out that each branch has its own ROTC in college, which I thought was just like a high school thing to prepare you for the military. So basically it's an officer and training program. So he puts in the 4 years of college, and then he'll enter the military for usually 4 years. So when he got this full 4-year scholarship through the military, we were ecstatic. Like, who could have seen that coming? We're so proud of him. And then circumstances beyond his control, he was medically disqualified, which we had no idea this could even be an issue. So suddenly, you know, he's at this school where we didn't even consider the cost because it was being paid for. You know, we turned down our financial aid, you know, everything. We didn't even consider more scholarships because I'm like, that's not fair to all the other kids who need the money. Yours is covered, so we stopped applying for scholarships, and we thought we were good. And then, you know, we find out in December that we owe for not only the semester he just took, but also the upcoming semester. And that was
what a Christmas present.
Yeah, that was a big hit, and you have to come up with the money quickly. I did learn that you can, even though you've turned down federal aid, it's still available to you. So we worked with financial aid office, and I was able to get a pay-it-forward private loan. And luckily, right about the same time that we got hit with this big bill, PA4 had announced its employee discount. Mm-hmm. So as a fee employee, I was able to take advantage of that. But yeah, it was just a lot of, it felt overwhelming. Mm-hmm. Like there was just so much to do so quickly, where I know how the process works, but it's a longer process if you're doing it the normal way.
Right.
So it was a lot.
I'm sure it was a lot. And I think you make a couple of good points too, because number one, even if you do turn down financial aid, federal aid, you can still reach out to the school's financial aid office to see what they can do, see what aid is still available to you. So that sometimes is a message that's missed with some students and families. They are thinking like, oh, we turned it down, we're just going to have to sit out a year, or we're just going to have to come up with a different plan. So I'm glad that you knew that, you know, there are the resources. Again, even with the PA-forward student loan option that was out there, again, that was a good plus for you as well. The other thing I think was good is that you knew, excuse me, that you didn't have a lot. You knew how to go to the school. For the families who are listening, what I always say is make sure at the beginning of the year you complete all financial aid paperwork, because you don't know what the end is going to look like.
Right. Complete
the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. If you're a Pennsylvania state resident, complete the PA state grant or any other aid applications that a student may qualify for, because at the end, if something is shifted or something's changing, you still have a safety net there that you can kind of reach out to. And if you've never done an application and you didn't do anything at all, there are some deadlines to some things. So some students may miss out on some pieces of the aid that is out there. So I do have a question for you, because this is FAFSA season, right? Mm-hmm. And actually, technically, FAFSA season should be over, but 24-25, there was a new FAFSA redesign. And for you all, did you do the 23-24 FAFSA also?
Yes.
And then you did a 24-25?
Yes.
What was your experience like with the new one versus the old?
I didn't have any problem with it either time, actually, but ours is a really simple situation. We don't have, my husband and I are married, you know, we don't have other families or other people contributing, or side businesses contributing. So I think ours is pretty simple to go through. I thought the newer one was even more intuitive.
Okay.
You know, it just kind of sent you to the next screen and walked you through. So I personally didn't have an issue with it, but I can understand where.
So you had a good experience. That's good to know. You had a good experience with the application process, because a lot of people didn't have that experience. And the one thing I've always said is when it works well. And I think it's a nice design when it works. It's just that if it doesn't. So I'm glad to hear that we have someone who says, you know what, I didn't have that bad experience with it. Talking financial aid in general, though, and having gone through this process, was there anything that surprised you, or how do you feel about the whole financial aid process?
So having worked in this financial aid position for all the years that I have, you know, we always tell the kids, exhaust gift aid first, you know, scholarships, grants, do work study, apply for your church, you know, or your parents' business might have a scholarship, you know, and we encourage them to do all these things, and then file the FAFSA, because that's going to get you federal aid, and look at the schools. They offer scholarships depending on your GPA, or, you know, what major you're going into, all different things. And I guess the biggest shocker to me was how little aid we still got and how high the price still was.
So that was the part you're like, whoa.
I know.
And that's not an unusual experience. It's a real experience for some families. Some students I know also have that shock when they see the first bill, because a lot of students don't really grasp that, wow, this is a one-year bill, and we're talking $10, $20, $30, $40,000 depending on the school that you've chosen. And I also think it's good to know that, you know, someone who works in the whole financial aid industry, so to speak, can still experience like the challenges and the unexpected things. Like, it's just real for everyone. How do you think you would have navigated this had you not worked at a FIA? Do you think there would have been more challenges? And I ask because I'm thinking about the parent who doesn't necessarily know about the grants, the scholarships, the work studies. They've not yet attended a financial aid night or a webinar or things like that. Like, do you think that you would have had access to that information, and what could a parent do if they're not well versed in aid?
I mean, I think I attended my first financial aid night long before my children were even born, so I've been going to a lot of your events. But I do think, like, even if I didn't work here, the schools share financial aid nights and financial aid completion sessions. In fact, I'll be like, oh, I know Tiffany's going to be at the school tonight. There's school counselors, you know, that the kids can talk to. We get the Pennsylvania Student Aid Guide that FIA puts out. So I think there's a lot of resources that are given to the kids. It's, as with anything, they have to take the extra step then to move forward with it.
So, tips and words of advice here. This is the part where we're going to say, we got listeners, we have parents, we have educators, we have students, hopefully, who are all listening in. Going through your entire process, including all of the challenges and things like that, what are some pieces of advice you could give to any of them? And we'll go through each of them about navigating a process filled with challenges, unexpected things, but knowing at the end that your child is now in a good place to have a great start. What advice would you have to a student? We'll start with them.
Well, I think this could probably be for students and parents. You know, you start with that timeline, junior year, what you should be doing, what you should have accomplished by the senior year. You know, at graduation, a lot of kids are already enrolled and know where they're going to go, and planning roommates and things like that. I think what they need to realize is it doesn't end the moment you drop them off on move-in day. There's lots of different things that could happen. I mean, in our case, you know, it's the end of his first year, and we're researching schools again, trying to figure out where is the best fit for him, because this wasn't. So, I mean, for us, we're kind of doing things that people were doing in their junior year, and we're doing it again because we're now headed down a different path. So I would say for students and parents, it's an ongoing journey. Right.
And be prepared, because you were prepared. At least you rolled up your sleeves and you said, you know what, we have to dig in. Again, something else you mentioned, and when you were saying it doesn't end when you drop them off. Just wondering, because we're at the end of a school year right now, students are about to embark on their next level. For those who are going on to higher ed, if they're going to be moving away, living on campus or getting their own apartment, what are some tips that you have to help students and families prepare for that part?
I think you have to trust as a parent that you've raised them the right way and given them the background, the foundation, the resources to do well, to succeed, to do all the things they need to do on their own. It's hard. It's hard to, you know, did he get up for class today? I wonder how he's doing in that. I mean,
how many times did you call to ask or text to say, hey, are you up? Or did you were hands off?
I did not.
You did not?
I did not.
Okay.
No. I felt like he's got to do that.
Got to figure it out.
Yeah.
All right.
It was hard though.
It was hard, but that's okay. But you did it. For the parent, and I think you answered it well. So best advice for students and parents. And if there's something else you want to add specifically for the parents, you can. But if not, I think you've summed that up. But experts. So for those who are in the industry helping students and parents try to navigate, are there any tips that you could give, or basically maybe something that you wish you would have had, or you were hopeful that maybe they could share or provide to have made this a little easier for you?
That I can't really think of.
No.
I feel like we had everything we needed, just not that knowledge that scholarship could be taken away.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Figured it out.
That would have good. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Overall speaking, when you're thinking like, okay, we're here with my son right now, we're moving into year 2. Overall, would you say it's been a good experience, and that aside from that one blip, would you change anything?
I mean, I guess you could say.
And no, it's okay.
Yeah. But I think I wish we had looked at the price of the school.
Okay.
If we had known there was any possibility of us having that bill, I wish we would have looked at that, because it's a very expensive school.
So do you think it's good for a student and family to have a plan B? Sometimes they'll say, hey, you know what? We've made our decision. We're putting everything and all focus right here. We're not worried about the plan B because we're good to go. Do you think when they're doing the planning, they'll say, hey, here's plan A, here's plan B, and make sure they kind of really work through both of them just in case?
I mean, I guess it never hurts to have
Never
a plan
hurts,
B.
right? Okay. I'm not a plan B type of person.
Well, you
all or
always
nothing.
hope the plan A is
It's all or
gonna work.
nothing. Yep.
I will say that the Common app makes it so easy to apply to several different schools. So actually the school he's going to next year is, I guess, what you would call a plan B.
Okay.
And now it's plan A because it's exactly what he wants. You know, he's very excited about the campus and the opportunities there, and even his classes. So.
Great. Anything else that you want to share about how to navigate this process?
I would say seek help wherever you need it. There's no shame in saying you don't understand how this process works, because it's very complicated. Just all the aspects of it, the financial aid, the figuring out the school, you know, how to take care of this and that, and even major exploration. You know, we have some amazing websites like educationplanner.org that we used, and My Smart Borrowing. So I think all of those different resources are really helpful in creating a solid plan, as solid as you can make it. You know, things happen, obviously, but I'd say, and attend financial aid nights.
There you go. I have to take you on the road with me. You gave the perfect wrap to when I'm telling students and families on at our fans to say, hey, make sure you tap into the resources. Make sure you reach out, and that's all good information. So I'm glad that you shared that. I think that's our PR in you coming out, that you're able to just spit it, which is great, because those are the reminders, because it can be an overwhelming process. Whether you're the parent, you're the student, maybe you're just someone who wants to help and assist, whether it's a neighbor or someone like that, there are resources that are available. Again, you mentioned educationplanner.org, college and career planning information, and there's a section for students, for parents, for those counselors, mysmartborrowing.org, and we've mentioned these all on the website before, on the podcast before. Also, FIA.org is also a great resource, and then from the federal standpoint, studentaid.gov. So those are usually my top picks. Oh, and the collegecost.ed.gov. So I throw all of those out for those who are listening, because it's a lot of information. It's overwhelming. And as we head into the summer, I think summer is the perfect time to do research. I always say to students, you know, take maybe one day a week and just take an hour, break it up into 2 30-minute sessions if you can, and do your exploration. Even to the student who's enrolled in their post-secondary experience. You know, maybe they can brush up on a few things, look for a few extra scholarships. So all of the information that you shared has been very valuable, helpful.
I will say that my daughter is looking at heading into an athletic type of focus with her college, and so finding that plus the major she wants. And I have no experience or knowledge on that at all. So even with all my years of experience here, and even with going through my son's process, you know, it's going to be a completely different process for her, and I need to find all those resources in that world too.
So stay tuned.
It never stops.
Maybe
never stop learning.
Maybe there'll be a podcast about that. Stay tuned. NCA Eligibility Center is also a great one, and I refer to a lot of students to that one as well. But stay tuned. You'll be surprised what will pop up on the podcast, and we'll have some
journey.
information. Yeah. But I wish you well on the journey with her, with both of them.
Thank you.
Thanks again for being here on the podcast with me.
Thanks for having me.
For all of the listeners, Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.